flying the C-17, was flying the C-130s in those combat missions. The one thing that closest to combat that I ever came to was in the Pentagon. And it was after I left flying the C-17, I went off to school in 99 to 2000, graduated in 2000, and my assignment put me at the Pentagon on the Air Force staff, and I was there from June of 2000 to November of 2002. And so, of course, that puts me there during the time of the 9/11 attacks. And I remember on that morning, I was sitting at my desk, and I knew I had a job. I had to get an email out to a guy real quick, and I was working on this email, and I remember our admin troop came in and said, "Hey, my husband called me and just said that an airplane just flew into the World Trade Center." And I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?" And so in my boss's office, there was a TV in there, so we put it on Fox News, and sure enough, I mean, there it was. So we're standing there watching this building, burn, and we're all huddled in his office. And then out of nowhere, you see the second airplane come in and attack and hit the building. So we all saw that live, real time. We're all thinking, wow, it's got to be terrorism. Just remember us talking about that. And so I watched that, and I kept watching my watch. I'm going, I got to get this email. I got to get this email. So I go over, and I'm sitting at my desk, and I type out this email, and I hit the send button. And I remember leaning back, going, wow, this is great. I got that thing done. I wonder what do I need to do next? I started thinking about the things for the day, and out of nowhere, I start hearing this loud roar that sounded like a C-17 at max power taking off. Just the loudest roar. It was just incredible. And I thought, and it was making a weird sound, like a descending type sound, and it was just getting loud. And it's funny how in a 2-second period of time, what seems like 5 minutes, I remember thinking, well, wow, normally when they do flybys here, they'll send an email out that'll pop up a queue on the bottom of your computer that says, expect a flyby at this time and this and that. And I didn't see that. And I couldn't think of any other thing that was going on. So I remember turning to my bud, and I turned to him and I said, do you hear that? Do you hear that? And about that time, boom. And I just remember a shake and a concussion, and it kind of knocked me a little bit from my chair, and I felt like a linebacker had hit me, and whenever I had kind of got my senses to myself, I immediately went in, training kind of kicked over, and you go, okay, am I okay? Are my buds okay? And then there was a window in front of me, so I lifted up the window and I looked out the window, and at the time I was on the 5th floor of the Pentagon. I was between Corridor 2 and Corridor 3. I was in the D ring. So our room was 5D284, I believe was our room number. And I remember looking out the window and seeing this black smoke rolling up over the building, and just thousands of papers. And I'm thinking, what just happened? And then about that time, the klaxon goes, you hear the siren going off, and a voice saying, exit the building, exit the building. And so we should start trying to grab our stuff and start making our way out the building. And I remember getting out of the office, and I went to the door, and some of the guys had already gone through, but I remember coming out the door, and I remember stopping. And I remember thinking, just to the right of the door at the end of the hallway there is fire. That's where the airplane hit. And I was thinking, do I need to go over there and help them? I mean, it's part of a soldier's to go where help is needed. And I was trying to think, do I go that way or do I go this way? And the next thing I know, I remember two hands coming up under my armpits and kind of shoving me out the door. And I was like, what happened? And I turned around, and I think it was Frank Benjamin, my buddy that was behind me. It was shoved me out the door. And by this time, smoke was starting to come through the vents. And we made our way down the hallway. I remember kind of trying to follow the wall of the hallway down. And we get down to the end of the hallway, and there was a worker that was there. The Pentagon hired disabled people to do work in the building to keep it clean. And they did a phenomenal job. And I'll tell you, those people were really an inspiration on bad days, because you had a few bad days and you would see these people coming in and they're smiling and carrying on and happy about everything. And so they're really an inspiration to it. But this one guy's name was Dion, and he loved the Dallas Cowboys. And so Deion Sanders was playing for the Cowboys at the time. So when he would come into our office, we would call him prime time, and he would light up, and he was just a great kid. I remember getting down at the end of the hallway, and there was Dion down there, and he was kind of making some noise, and he was kind of beating his head. You could tell he was just did not know what to do. So we, me and another buddy grabbed him, and we took him down the stairwell. And we got down the stairwell, and there was somebody down there at the end of the stairwell that was trying to collect some of that staff. And so we left Dion with them, and we exited out the building. As we exited out the building, I remember just right off to the right is where the fireball was. And the thing I just remember was the heat and the smell of jet fuel, the smell of insulation, the smell of just things burning. And I can even, nowadays, it doesn't take much for me to smell something like that just takes me right back to that day. And I remember kind of looking off to the side. I remember there was a woman laying there, and I really don't remember what she was wearing, but I knew it was a dress. Hose was kind of burned, but you could tell she was dead, and there was nothing you could do for her. Whether she was inside the building or outside the building when that happened, or I don't really know, but I just remember seeing that. And then I remember where we were at. We went to a rally point and did a head count, and we were all there, but I'd made my way around to the building, as always, trying to see if you could help with something. I just remember seeing the bodies laying out there that were being triaged and all, and couldn't remember, just, man, it was just a bad scene. And then to go to work in the morning, I would basically what they would call slug. In Northern Virginia area, you would, if you didn't take the bus, you could ride with folks, and they would take the high occupancy vehicle lanes into the Pentagon. And so there was a guy that used to pick me up in the mornings. And it's, when you have a habit pattern to go into the lot at 6:30 in the morning, typically you see the same people because you're on that same time schedule. And this guy's name was Bob Heimel, and he was a retired Air Force guy, retired lieutenant colonel. I think he flew B-52s in the Vietnam War, and he had flown a B-52. If I remember him telling me these stories, we ended up having conversations, going into work in the morning. I would share my bad times with him, and he would share, hey, I tell you the time I was a co-pilot over Hanoi, and an airplane got shot down, or not shot down, but shot up, and we're flying back to my base, and we crashed, and of the survivors, he was one of the survivors. And to hear his story was just unbelievable. And then, so after a few days, I was starting to look for Bob in the slug line. And I never saw him. I couldn't figure out, what had happened to him. Maybe his schedule changed. I really didn't think that much about it. But one afternoon, I was going to the gym in the Pentagon. And as I was going by the gym, I noticed they had put this memorial up, to the folks that were in the Pentagon. And just this one particular day, I'll just never forget, I was walking, and as I looked to the left, my eyes went right to Bob's picture. And there he was, and he had been killed in that attack. And so from that point, the whole war became very personal to me, and I dedicated every ounce of energy in my life to that war to the day I retired after that. I would say it became very serious, as expected, but what I'll never forget is we reported back for work the next day at 7 a.m. because I remember my boss saying, hey, the enemy is trying to hurt us, and we're not going to let them show them that they can get to us. So we all agreed we're coming back at 7 in the morning to get our work done. But from then on, it became a very serious thing. And while we were working on things to balance a budget and to make sure things were, because at the time I was a C-17 programmer, so I was working with money to buy things for the C-17 to make sure that we keep it, current, updated, and moving forward, and buying additional airplanes. I was trying to balance my budget to make sure that I could get the things I needed. But then after 9/11, all bets are off, and you had President Bush come up to say, whatever you needed, let us know. And so from there, it became very serious, and we were doing everything that we could to fly and fight the war. And I remember just a few days later, I went down to get lunch in the cafeteria, and there was President Bush greeting people, and I got to go up to him and shake his hand and thank him for what he was doing. And of course, he thanked us for what we were doing. And again, another morale booster to see the president take time out of his schedule to come and, you know, and spend time with us. But the atmosphere got very serious. I mean, we were all about, my goodness, man, before we had nothing to really fight for, you know, but now it's personal. And we were doing everything we can to help win this war on terror.